Silence came only when she closed her eyes, when she could visually shut the world up for a moment. She had practiced to do this, years of trying to silence the noises and the demands of all around her. Her world was her own, when her eyes were wide shut. These weren't flights or fancies into different realms, or some grapple with mental tectonic plates. She had a quiet space and a peaceful world in her head, which was a copy of the world around her. It was just devoid of others. Other people's troubles, angers, confronted demands and taxes on her. They played on her time and her patience, milking off her generosity as if they were an endless source. How much should she have to contend with? What was a reasonable demand on her each day that she had to wake, roam around entertaining this thing called life? Must she always be left reduced by a need to give? For the past few years, and for her own well-being, she had blocked it out by closing her eyes and escaping. Escaping to a place that was just like her own, but a place she wanted so much more, yet knew she could never have. Her existence was not special, and her circumstances were not unique. She came and went like many a woman who had children, pets, and a wife hanging off her arms and her emotions. Work was work. She went there and performed, and was glad to leave. These simple pleasures were only occasionally pleasurable to her. Many people she knew escaped in their own ways, finding relief in their abdication from life through the murky haze of wine bottles or the opiate rush from the dust in their blood. But she had noticed at first that she could erase people quite easily. When she closed her eyes without trying to rub anyone out, she found people she knew became grey blobs of the indistinguishable. Like an old art class she had taken once, they became moving abstract forms that spewed and belched words and noises. She took them away one by one, first by quietening them down and then minimising each until they became as small and as quiet as mice. They would run about at her feet when she moved about the rooms of her world. Reading through, remembering a favourite novel, or sitting comfortably in her favourite spot by the fire. The mice soon scattered when she introduced a cat that she had found, a black little thing that would terrorise them away, digesting some of the more fat and obnoxious ones she had noticed. Soon the mice had gone, and so too the cat, off into the garden or down the street to clear off the other vermin she hoped she had designed. At first it was her alone, after the departure. Many might come to hate the solitude, but Mary craved it more and more, closing her eyes more often to the world that wrangled and jangled her daily. It was an odd moment in her new Elysium land where she first noticed the other presence. At first she thought it was a delayed shadow caught in the corner, moving slower to her actions as her world slowly stuttered to a stop. The fog of the other, a collection of moments or memories, she presumed, weighted down, like she was at times, by the weight of the world. But then she would catch a flash of an eye in the darkness, a movement of a mist that began to take a silhouetted form. She would see it sneak around the landing and creep into another room, gone whenever she would go to investigate. One day she called out to it, and ever since that day it remained. She knew what it was the moment she confronted it, the being that now looked so similar to her. She asked it to go, she yelled and threw things in her world, demanding it to depart. But it would not be told, and it would not be moved. It took a place now on one of the sofas on the far side of the living room, on the cosier spot that she herself used to prefer, looking out over the birch trees in the front garden. She tutted inside, rearranging herself in the room to curl up and relax with the misty black figure looming across from her. She was not afraid, just irritated by it. This was her domain, but now she had added failure to the list of achievements and not being able to rid the thing from her own created place. Back in the real world, she went along as she always had, making dinners, going to parents' evenings, doing the groceries, the humdrum trappings of normality that she loathed and also clung to. Only once did she spot it in this place, in this real world. She noticed it after a particularly violent verbal fight with her wife late on a Tuesday evening. The black spectre hung for a moment in the corner of the room, the eyes and the shame glaring at her mockingly. It hovered and hummed for a moment before slithering off into the ether. It had frightened her to know that it had stepped over, but she rationalised it all to herself. It was just a moment, maybe a trick of the light, and it hadn't happened again. But she had noticed since, when she went into her own world, the one that she created to escape, that the black thing now was much more vibrant and prominent in its spaces where it roamed, as if energised by its travel across the borders that she was sure was so safe. She had thought of starting her world again, but that was what it wanted, what its whole essence was about. So Mary refused. She refused much like she did in the real world, blinded by her own ego to do what would help. So now when she closes her eyes and switches off the world by entering her own, she greets the figure, not like a friend, but as one might taunt an enemy, mocking it in her refusal to change and sitting across from it sipping her tea in silent victory. The tea now, though, she noticed, had come to lose its taste.